Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the BT Show. I'm here to do a review of Red 1, starring The Rock, Chris Evans, and J.K. Simmons. As always, I'll start with non-spoiler thoughts first, and let's just get right into it. So this movie was made by Amazon and MGM Studios, and I guess there's two ways to talk about this. There's the movie itself, and then there's how this movie fits into the context of Chris Evans and The Rock's career. So I'll get to both of them before I get into spoilers. This movie was originally supposed to be, I think, just a streaming movie, and it came out. Now they wanted a theater release. So this was an Amazon property, and I guess a $7 production, which they had. They show us at least 2, if not 3 times before the movie, because The Rock needs credit. But anyway, I guess right off the bat, this was actually not a bad movie. It was pretty solid. It fits into the. I thought it was going to fit into the category. It fits into a little bit of a category of a movie that I like to call a skeleton movie. And those are the kind of movies, and I'll talk about this, I guess, going on, but this movie actually had way more, going on than I thought it would. I think at times it kind of goes back and forth between an action comedy, and then it takes itself way too seriously. But I'm glad that the movie was well paced. It was about 2 hours. I think it could have been a little bit shorter, but not too bad. This is kind of the classic. When you think of a streaming movie, I think this is what you think of. You think of a movie that's going to entertain you, that maybe has a theme to it. This one obviously being Christmas. But also a movie that you probably wouldn't see in theaters. And I think this fits all of them. I'm not saying you shouldn't see it in theaters, but this is definitely a movie you can wait to watch around Christmas time, which I think is way more fitting. And they dropped it a little bit early. I don't know why you dropped this right before Thanksgiving, but I guess maybe they want to have this build up to a Christmas release. I'm not sure. Anyway, there actually is a good amount to spoil about this movie, so I won't get into it, but good performances by The Rock. As always, a pretty good performance by Chris Evans. I thought J.K. Simmons was good. Just an overall good Christmas movie. It has some really good CGI. I thought the CGI, when it was used for certain elements of the story, I thought were good. It looked good. It honestly was well paced, although some of the storylines were kind of dumb, and this is more geared towards, I don't say kids, but younger people. It's more of a family movie, but it wasn't boring, which I think is obviously a good thing. Now let's get talking to how this movie fits into The Rock and Chris Evans' career, because that's where I have an issue. The Rock plays his character extremely well. We've seen it a million times. We saw it in the Fast and Furious movies. We've seen it really just in all of this movie. He plays like this big, huge action guy who's really strong, who's like a special agent sometimes or whatever, and he just has a lot of charisma. And like, this is how The Rock got famous. This is how he became the number one, at least earning actor in the world, or just movie star, entertainment star in general. But I don't understand why he doesn't try and make. I know now he's trying to make more serious things, like like he has this movie coming out called The Smashing Machine, where he'll be a UFC fighter. So that might be cool. But other than that, I don't understand. Everyone talks about Batista, and even without him, I just don't understand why The Rock continues. I mean, obviously because of the money, he probably makes a lot of money. He probably made like, who knows, 15, 20 million for this movie. But he has to start taking some risks. Maybe he'll start doing that as he gets closer to 60 and he's not in roles where he needs to be as big and physical. He can kind of transition into more of those kind of serious roles. But even like, I always compare him to Schwarzenegger instead of Batista. Schwarzenegger had all these movies like Commando and Predator, and The Rock doesn't really have those kind of, even though he's big and strong in the movies, they're always kind of childish. They're not like these masculine action movies, which I think he should make. Except for Fast and Furious, which I thought he was very good in, obviously. And then you take it from the Chris Evans perspective, and this is where I have probably an even bigger issue. Is Chris Evans, obviously he was really successful as Captain America, but ever since then, he's doing this very obvious thing where, and in this movie, he's like a petty criminal hacker, where it's so obvious that his agents and his team are trying to basically make him the opposite of Captain America in every role. It started in Knives Out, and then it went into The Gray Man, and now it's in this movie, and it's just like so obvious what they're trying to do. Like, oh, let's cast him as the polar opposite of Captain America. And I understand it like the first time, even the second time, but now it's just getting out of hand. And I think he's bungling his time since Captain America, since the Avengers Endgame, even worse than, Robert Downey Jr. has now won an Oscar and an Oppenheimer, so he's been successful. And the thing with Robert Downey Jr. is he had a much longer career before the Avengers movies than Chris Evans did. Chris Evans, I mean, Knives Out was good. The Gray Man was okay, but he seems to just make similar to The Rock. Which is ironic that they're together, is because they keep making these types of movies and they don't really seem to want or take serious roles. They just want to take these movies where they can make a good paycheck, which there's nothing wrong with it, but I would expect Chris Evans to maybe, want to do stuff a little bit more serious. And so I think, although the movie I thought was pretty solid, I'll get into spoilers and the issues I have. I think I don't really understand it from Chris Evans' perspective or from The Rock's perspective. I mean, even you think of a movie like Roadhouse, right, with Jake Gyllenhaal. That's a role that Chris Evans could have played. Just off the top of my head, there's so many roles that these guys can play, but they seem to want to do these types of movies. So anyway, let me get into spoiler thoughts now. Like I said, I think this is worth the watch just to check it out. I think it'll be on Prime probably during Christmas time. But even if you just wanted to go to the movie theaters and see like a decent action movie and not take it too seriously, I think it's a decent watch. It's definitely not bad. It's definitely not dumpster fire, and it looks good. Not all the jokes land, but it is what it is. I do expect the critics to shit on this movie. I do expect people who take movies too seriously to shit on this movie. But from my perspective, it's not bad. It is what it is. So now let me get into spoilers. This is your official spoiler warning in 3, 2, 1. So J.K. Simmons plays essentially Santa Claus in this movie, and when I say they take it seriously, so it starts off at the mall, and J.K. Simmons is at the mall, and he's playing Santa Claus, and The Rock is like a security guard, and you think it's just kind of like a joke, but then they kind of walk off into this hangar. They get escorted by almost like Secret Service, and they show like these gigantic reindeers, which are CGI, but they look pretty good. And that's when you can tell, like, oh, he's actually is Santa Claus, and Santa Claus is real. So that's like the first twist I didn't want to give away. And then they kind of, he goes on the sled, and they basically do like a supersonic boom into, I guess, what's supposed to be the North Pole. And so that's really, I guess, the outline of the story is The Rock is in charge of like security, ELF, something logistics, fortification, something like that. And anyway, so yeah, that's what I mean when I say like it takes itself seriously. If they do take these parts of the movie seriously, which is obviously kind of goofy because it's Santa Claus, but that's what they do. And anyway, the plot of this movie is Santa Claus gets kidnapped by this like evil witch and her organization, and they're just pretty much just trying to lock up or enslave all of the bad people on Santa's list. So yeah, it's a really goofy plot line, and but they do take it seriously, and Chris Evans basically gets recruited to team up with The Rock, and that's when it turns into a buddy cop movie. And they essentially are just traveling around trying to find him, and eventually they find him at the end. They have a run-in with his brother Krampus, and that's a whole action scene. And eventually they defeat the evil witch. That's like this, the story of the movie. Along the way, there's a lot of like, I guess, pretty good action scenes and some cool stuff. The most notable thing that stuck out about this movie is just the blatant ripoff of Ant-Man. The Rock is using Ant-Man's powers, basically is Ant-Man the entire movie, which is so ironic because he just had issues with Black Adam, so to like have that kind of superhero connection again. Basically, he doesn't get big, but he gets small and then punches you and gets big again and does that whole Ant-Man routine. And not only that, he does the thing where he has like a mini car and he makes it big and it turns into a big car. And he does this like 10 times throughout the movie. So I thought that was very noticeable. It's not that they can't do it, but it was just very noticeable. And yeah, at the end of the movie, they essentially win. And I think those are like the big spoiler points that I want to do behind a spoiler warning. There's not, I'm not going to break down the plot like a regular movie. I just wanted to say that. So yeah, I would see this movie, like I said, wait for streaming. It was pretty solid, but it's nothing spectacular. It looked good, but I do have concerns about The Rock and Chris Evans' career. If I was advising them, if I was their agent, I wouldn't be having them do this types of movies. Other than making money, I don't think it really adds that much. Other than just keeping them in the general, in the news, keep their career going and alive. So that's my review of Red 1. A pretty solid movie. I'd give it like maybe a 6 out of 10. A solid watch. Thanks guys for watching. And as always, I'll see you on the next one.